This is Kevin Annett in the city of Vancouver, downtown east side. Now, people have heard about the September 16th tribunal to which Justin Trudeau and others were summoned to answer charges about complicity in genocide today, the ongoing genocide, the missing and murdered Aboriginal families, not just women. Now, we're going to present to you some of the evidence that will be given at that tribunal, whether or not the subpoenaed people like Trudeau even show up. The tribunal is going ahead anyway, the charges have been laid. This is a very important site because it's St. James Anglican Church. Now, the Anglican Church, along with the Catholics and the United Church, are heavily involved in ongoing human trafficking. We have that solid evidence from eyewitnesses that the era of the residential schools never ended. It just shifted location. They're bringing in a lot of women, children, men from overseas, not just Aboriginal families, but people from overseas. And one of the sites where they're being trafficked is right here in the harbor through something called the Flying Angels Mission, which is the Anglican Church mission. It's a front by which human trafficking occurs in Vancouver. Now, St. James Anglican was a site right here, the site of many of our protests. And every time we protested here, the police would show up, people would start getting arrested, the church would freak out because they don't like a spotlight being brought on this church. Now, one of the people who paid the price for spotlighting this was my friend Bingo Dawson. He led the occupation of St. James Anglican Church. Bingo went in, and he was, right after we did the occupation there, the priest got very upset. And the next day, I was right down at the corner of Main and Hastings here. A police sergeant came up to Bingo Dawson and said, "Troublemakers like you go missing." And sure enough, about a month later, Bingo was found dead. They claim alcohol withdrawal. In fact, Ricky LaValle and another eyewitness saw cops beating him in an alley, and yet that wasn't on the death certificate. Bingo was also an eyewitness to crimes in Anglican residential schools at Alert Bay. He was one of our people who was murdered deliberately right after leading the occupation of this church. And I chronicle some of that in our book, Fallen, the story of the Vancouver Four. You can get this on Amazon.com under the name Kevin Annett, A-N-N-E-T-T. Also, murderbydecree.com has a lot of this information. But this is the kind of evidence we're presenting to show that this human trafficking is occurring with the same actors, the same criminals of church and state. It's a continuity of genocide, and this is one of the scenes of the crime.